In Victorian England, fathers were legally allowed to beat their children with anything short of a weapon, but many needed written permission from their wives to hug them. No, seriously, for children of even the wealthiest homes, seeing your father's tears would be rarer than seeing a unicorn in Piccadilly Circus. Quick thing, subscribe if you want more of these. And hey, where are you listening from? What time is it there? Someone from Amsterdam told me they listen at 4 a.m. and I'm wondering if that's before bed or just really early morning. Alright, tonight it's Victorian fatherhood, but wait. Are you comfortable? No, really, check. Pillows, blankets, the whole deal. Where we're going, you'll want to be settled. So congratulations, you're waking up in London, 1862. First thing that hits you is the cold. Not just normal cold, but that bone-seeping dampness that seems to be the permanent condition of English buildings. Your narrow bed has a lumpy horsehair mattress with sheets that haven't been changed in... well, let's not think about that. Unlike your cozy memory foam back in the real world, this bed feels like sleeping on a sack of potatoes that occasionally moves on its own. The darkness is almost complete, except for a faint glow coming through a gap in the heavy curtains. No electric lights here, no phone alarm, just the distant sounds of the household starting to wake, muffled footsteps of servants already hard at work 2 floors below you. You sit up, heart immediately pounding. Today is the day. Father returns from his business trip and the entire household routine will snap back to military precision. The comfortable, relaxed atmosphere that settled over the house during his 2-week absence will vanish the moment his polished boots cross the threshold. Master Henry, are you awake yet? The voice belongs to Mrs. Pottinger, the housekeeper. She doesn't wait for an answer before barging in, carrying a small pitcher of lukewarm water. Come now, your father's train arrives at 10 o'clock sharp. Everything must be perfect. You're what, 10 years old? 11? Old enough to understand the gravity of father's return, but young enough to still secretly wish for his approval, his affection, something more than the stiff nod he gives you at the dinner table. Yes, Mrs. Pottinger. Your voice comes out small and proper, just as you've been trained. Your mother expects you dressed and at breakfast in 20 minutes. Cook has made kippers. Great kippers. The smoked fish that fills the dining room with its pungent aroma, your father's favourite breakfast. Your stomach turns a little, but you'd never dare complain. Father believes complaints are the first sign of a weak character. Remember what happened last time your father found you improperly dressed, Mrs. Pottinger adds, her voice dropping to a whisper. Oh, you remember the silent rage in father's eyes when he spotted your unlaced boot, the calm, terrifying way he said, "I'll see you in my study directly after breakfast." The waiting was always worse than the punishment itself, standing outside his study door for what felt like hours, hearing him methodically finish his coffee, open and close his newspaper, and finally his measured footsteps approaching the door. Mrs. Pottinger leaves, and you begin the elaborate process of dressing yourself. Unlike modern kids who throw on whatever's handy, you've got layers upon layers, drawers, stockings, shirt with its stiff collar, waistcoat, jacket. Each button is a small battle for your child fingers, but mistakes are not tolerated, not in this house. The house itself is a testament to your father's position in society, a narrow but elegant townhouse in a respectable London neighbourhood, 4 stories of mahogany furniture, heavy draperies and rooms that children enter only by invitation. The wallpaper in your bedroom features a pattern of small sailing ships, the one concession to childhood in a room otherwise designed to create a miniature adult. You splash some water on your face from the ceramic basin, wincing at its temperature. Catching your reflection in the small mirror, you straighten your collar one last time. Father would notice even a single wrinkle. "Henry, come down this instant." Your mother's voice carries up the stairs. Breakfast in a Victorian household is a surprisingly substantial affair, especially for adults. The sideboard is laden with covered silver dishes, eggs, bacon, kippers, kidneys, toast racks, and jams. But children, particularly when father is present, are expected to eat quietly and minimally. A soft boiled egg and a piece of toast is your usual allocation. Your mother sits at one end of the table, already dressed in a morning gown of deep blue. She's young still, only in her early 30s, but carries herself with the practiced dignity required of a Victorian matron. She doesn't look up when you enter, but continues buttering a small piece of toast. "Good morning, Mother," you say, executing a small bow as expected. "Good morning, Henry. Sit properly, please. Your sister will join us shortly." You climb into your chair, back straight, hands in your lap until served. The room smells of coffee, kippers, and furniture polish. The heavy curtains are drawn back just enough to allow a pale rectangle of morning light across the Persian rug. "Is father's train on time?" you ask, trying to keep your voice neutral. "One does not begin a conversation with a question," your mother corrects automatically. "And yes, according to the telegram, his business in Manchester concluded successfully. We expect him by 11. You nod, accepting a small spoonful of scrambled eggs from the maid who serves breakfast. Your little sister Emily arrives, 7 years old and already a master of the silent entry. She curtsies to your mother and slides into her chair without a word. "Children," your mother says, setting down her teacup with precision, "I expect absolute perfection today. Your father has been securing important business connections, and he will be in no mood for childish behavior. You will speak only when spoken to at dinner. You will have your lessons completed before he arrives, and," she pauses, fixing each of you with a stern look, "you will under no circumstances enter his study without permission. Is that understood?" "Yes, Mother," you both murmur in unison. What your mother doesn't say, what she doesn't need to say, is that father's moods upon returning from business trips are unpredictable at best. Sometimes he returns with small presents hidden in his luggage and a rare smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Other times, he brings only a thundercloud of displeasure that hangs over the house for days. Henry will be waiting in the foyer to greet father when he arrives. Your mother continues, "Emily, you will wait in the drawing room until called." The unfairness stings Emily visibly. She adores father despite his strictness, but she knows better than to protest. "Henry," your mother adds, "your mathematics tutor reported that your work was sloppy yesterday. You will redo the entire set before your father returns." Your heart sinks. 20 complex fractions to recalculate, and the morning already half gone. "Yes, Mother." Breakfast concludes in silence. As you rise to leave, your mother stops you with a gentle hand on your shoulder, a rare physical contact that makes you freeze in surprise. "Henry," she says, voice softer than before, "your father has been under considerable strain. The business, well, it's not for children to worry about, but please, do try to make him proud today." The intensity in her eyes tells you more than her words. Something is wrong with the family business. Suddenly, father's return takes on a more ominous significance. "I'll do my best, Mother." And you will. Because despite the rigid rules, despite the distance he maintains, despite everything, he's still your father, and somewhere deep in your child's heart, you still believe that perfect behavior might someday earn you what you truly want, his affection freely given, not measured out in rare, formal moments of approval. Back in your room, the mathematics problems seem designed to torment you. Each fraction mocks your efforts as the minutes tick by on the small clock on your desk. Through your window, you can see the street below coming to life. Delivery boys with their carts, a maid from the house across the way beating a rug, two gentlemen in top hats deep in conversation. The real torment isn't the mathematics, though. It's knowing that in a few hours, Father will walk through the front door, and the moment he does, you'll once again be torn between craving his attention and dreading his disappointment. Master Henry, Mrs. Pottinger's voice makes you jump, smudging your last calculation. He's coming up the street now. Your mother says to come down immediately. Your stomach plummets as you hastily wipe your ink-stained fingers on a cloth. The mathematics is only half finished. There's no time to change your slightly rumpled jacket. Father is early and you are unprepared. In the entrance hall, your mother is already positioned, back straight, hands clasped before her. She gives you a quick, critical once-over but says nothing about your appearance. Too late now. The sound of footsteps on the front steps, the rattle of the door handle, and then he's there. Father fills the doorway, a tall figure in a dark travelling coat, his beard neatly trimmed, his hat in one hand and his walking stick in the other. His face gives nothing away as he surveys the entrance hall, eyes moving from your mother to you and back again. "Margaret," he says, nodding to your mother. "Charles," she responds with a small curtsy, "we are delighted at your safe return." His gaze shifts to you, and you feel yourself being assessed, measured, every flaw noted. You bow just as you've been taught, not too deep, that would be servile, but enough to show proper respect. "Father, welcome home," you say, your rehearsed line delivered without stumbling. He hands his hat and coat to the waiting butler, then does something unexpected. He reaches into his waistcoat pocket and withdraws a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Henry," he says, his voice neither warm nor cold, merely precise. "I trust you've maintained your studies in my absence." You swallow hard, thinking of the half-finished mathematics. "Yes, Father." "Good, then perhaps you might make use of this." He extends the package, and you take it with slightly trembling hands. This is the moment that makes all the rigid rules worthwhile, the rare occasion when Father acknowledges you as more than just an obligation. "Thank you, Father," you say, not daring to open it in his presence without permission. He gives a short nod, then turns to your mother. "I'll refresh myself and then require tea in the drawing room. We have matters to discuss." "Of course," she says. "Emily is waiting to greet you as well." A shadow passes over his face at the mention of your sister. Not displeasure, but something more complex. "Yes, well, business first." He strides past you toward the stairs, his footsteps echoing on the polished wood. Only when he's gone does your mother's posture relax slightly. "Open it then," she says, nodding at the package still clutched in your hands. With careful fingers, you unwrap the brown paper to reveal a small brass compass, its needle swinging gently to find north. It's beautiful, practical, and completely unexpected. "He remembered," you whisper, more to yourself than to your mother. 3 months ago, during a rare family outing to the park, you had shown interest in a military officer's navigational equipment. Father had said nothing at the time, and you assumed the moment had passed unnoticed like so many others, but he had remembered. Your mother's hand touches your shoulder again, this fleeting contact speaking volumes in a household where physical affection is rarely displayed. Put it away safely now, and finish your mathematics before he asks about it. You clutch the compass tightly, this physical proof that somewhere behind Father's rigid exterior, he sees you, actually sees you. In the relative privacy of the stairwell, you allow yourself a moment of pure joy, pressing the compass to your chest. The Victorian father is a complex creature, bound by society's expectations, driven by the need to create proper English gentlemen and ladies, restricted by rigid codes of behaviour that seem alien to modern sensibilities. But beneath the stern exterior, behind the formal address and the measured discipline, there beats a human heart, and sometimes, on rare and precious occasions like this one, you catch a glimpse of the love that's hidden there, expressed not in hugs or words of affection, but in a small brass compass that says what a Victorian father cannot: I see you, I know you, you matter to me. You carefully pocket the compass and hurry back to your mathematics problems. Father is home and the house has shifted back to its most formal self, but as you work, your fingers occasionally drift to your pocket, touching the solid proof that the distance between you and your father might be measured in more ways than just the proper bow at breakfast. Because in Victorian England, love often speaks in whispers, in small gifts, in moments of unexpected attention, and sometimes that has to be enough. As Father disappears into his study, his sanctuary where no one enters without explicit permission, you return to your desk with renewed determination. What you don't know yet is that today something is about to change. The careful balance of your Victorian household is about to shift, and the true nature of your father's heart will be revealed in ways you never imagined possible. In a world where children and fathers orbited each other like distant planets constrained by gravity but rarely touching, you're about to discover what happens when those orbits finally, unexpectedly collide. Your real education is about to begin. The ink on your mathematics page has barely dried when you hear it. Raised voices from below. Father's deep baritone, usually so controlled, now sharp with alarm. Your mother's higher tone, attempting to soothe but tinged with her own worry. Something is very wrong in the world of adults, and despite a lifetime of training to stay in your place until called, you find yourself drawn toward the sound like a moth to flame. After all, the compass in your pocket proves that sometimes rules were meant to be broken, even in Victorian England. You place it on top of your mathematics book and slip quietly toward the stairs, each step bringing you closer to a truth you never expected to discover, that behind the stern mask of Victorian fatherhood lies a heart as vulnerable and human as your own. You freeze on the landing, caught between two worlds, the safety of your room with its unfinished mathematics and the forbidden territory of downstairs where adult concerns are unfolding. Your bare feet make no sound on the polished wood as you creep toward the banister. "Charles, please lower your voice. The children will hear." Your mother's voice drifts up, strained but still maintaining that essential Victorian composure. "Let them hear." Father's voice cracks like thunder. Perhaps they should know what their future holds if this continues. You've never heard him like this before. The careful control that defines him, that defines every proper Victorian gentleman, has slipped. It's both terrifying and strangely thrilling. "The Manchester investors pulled out," he continues, voice dropping to a harsh whisper that you strain to catch. "Bradford too. They're saying the American situation is too unstable. Cotton prices are through the roof and no one's willing to take the risk." American situation? You try to make sense of the words. There's a war happening across the ocean. You've heard whispers of it, seen the headlines on Father's newspaper, something about states and slavery and President Lincoln. "But surely the reserve capital will sustain us until," your mother begins. "There is no reserve capital." Father's fist slams against something solid. His desk, perhaps. Jameson has been cooking the books for years. The money's gone, Margaret. All of it. A small gasp escapes your mother. The closest thing to an emotional outburst you've ever heard from her. The floorboard beneath your foot creaks, and suddenly the voices stop. You hold your breath, heart hammering against your ribs. "Henry," your mother calls. "Is that you on the stairs?" Caught. There's no escape now. Victorian children might be seen and not heard, but right now you're not supposed to be either. You descend the remaining stairs, each step feeling like a march to the gallows. In the doorway of Father's study, you stop and bow, eyes fixed on the Persian carpet beneath your feet. I heard voices," you manage. Father stands behind his massive mahogany desk, his face a storm cloud. Your mother sits in one of the leather chairs opposite him, her back rigid as a fireplace poker. "You were eavesdropping," Father states, not a question. "No, sir. Yes, sir. I was concerned." Father's eyes narrow. In this moment, you're acutely aware of your vulnerability. A child in a world controlled entirely by adults where one misstep can lead to severe consequences. This isn't like modern times where children have rights and protections. Here, your father's authority is absolute. But then something unexpected happens. Father sighs, the anger seeming to drain from him like water from a basin. He looks suddenly older, the lines around his eyes deeper than you've ever noticed before. "Come in, boy, and close the door." Your eyes widen in surprise. Enter the study, Father's sacred domain. Children are summoned here only for punishment or the most formal of communications, never for whatever this is. You glance at your mother, who gives a small nod, her face unreadable. The study smells of leather, tobacco, and furniture polish. Heavy curtains filter the midday light into a dim, serious glow. Every surface gleams with polish and purpose. The bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, the globe in its wooden stand, the row of perfectly sharpened pencils on the desk. "Sir, I apologize for the interruption, and for the mathematics," you begin, falling back on formality as a shield. "Sit down, Henry," Father interrupts, gesturing to the chair beside your mother. You perch on the edge, back straight, hands folded in your lap, just as you've been taught. The clock on the mantel ticks loudly in the silence. "Your mother and I have been discussing business matters," Father says finally. "Matters that do not ordinarily concern children. However," he exchanges a look with your mother, "circumstances have changed." Something cold settles in your stomach. In your 11 years, you've never heard Father speak like this, as if you're an equal deserving of information rather than just instruction. "The textile mill in Manchester," he continues, "is facing difficulties, significant difficulties." "Because of the American war?" you ask, the words slipping out before you can stop them. Father's eyebrows rise in surprise. "You know of this?" "I read the newspapers sometimes, sir, when you're finished with them." A ghost of something, approval, flickers across his face. "Yes, the war has disrupted cotton supplies. Prices have risen beyond what many can afford. Orders have been cancelled." Your mother's hands twist in her lap, the only sign of her distress. "What your father is trying to say, Henry, is that certain adjustments will be necessary in our household." Adjustments. The word hangs in the air like a guillotine blade. "We will need to economize," Father says bluntly. "Dismiss some of the staff, your Latin tutor, perhaps relocate to a smaller residence." The weight of his words crashes over you. In Victorian England, a family's position in society is everything. The number of servants, the location of one's home, the quality of one's education, these aren't just comforts, they're the markers that separate respectable middle-class families from those on the brink of ruin. "But," Your voice falters. What will happen to us? It's a child's question, direct and unvarnished by social niceties. In any other circumstance, father would have reprimanded you for such bluntness. Instead, he rubs his hand across his face, a gesture so uncharacteristically vulnerable that it frightens you more than his anger ever could. I don't know, Henry, he says quietly. I truly don't know. Your mother reaches out and takes your hand, an unprecedented display of physical affection in father's presence. We will manage, she says firmly. The Armitages have weathered difficult times before. Father turns to the window, his back to you both. In the harsh light, you notice for the first time that his coat is frayed slightly at the cuffs. Has it always been that way, or is this new evidence of the economizing already in progress? Sir, you begin hesitantly. Perhaps I could help. He turns, eyebrow raised. You? How could a child possibly help with business matters? The dismissal stings, but you press on. I could give up my birthday celebration next month, and Emily doesn't really need new boots yet. Your mother's hand tightens on yours. Father's expression shifts into something you can't quite read. For a Victorian man trained from boyhood to never display emotion, to maintain control at all costs, what you're witnessing is the equivalent of another man weeping openly. That's... He clears his throat. That's thoughtful, Henry, but not necessary at this stage. He moves to his desk and picks up a letter, turning it over in his hands. I've written to your Uncle William in Yorkshire. He has offered us temporary use of the old family cottage near his estate while I attempt to salvage what remains of the business. Yorkshire. The word explodes in your mind like a firework. The wild, windswept moors, so different from London's crowded streets. You've visited only once, when you were too young to remember clearly, but Uncle William's letters always paint it as a place of almost magical freedom. When would we go? Your mother asks, her voice carefully neutral. Within the fortnight, before creditors can make formal claims. Another shock. 2 weeks to pack up your entire life, to say goodbye to the only home you've ever known, to disappear from London society before rumours of financial ruin can destroy what remains of the family reputation. What about school, you ask, thinking of your friends, your cricket matches, your carefully cultivated position as third best in mathematics? Local arrangements will be made, Father says shortly. Your education won't suffer. But that's not what you're worried about, not really. You're worried about disappearing, about becoming invisible. In Victorian England, to step down the social ladder is to vanish from the view of those who once acknowledged you. May I tell Emily, you ask? Your parents exchange glances again, that mysterious adult communication that excludes children. Not yet, your mother says. We'll tell her together when arrangements are more settled. Father returns to his desk chair, the leather creaking beneath his weight. For a moment the three of you sit in silence, the weight of unspoken fears hanging between you. Then Father does something so unexpected, so contrary to everything you know about him, that you almost think you're dreaming. He opens a drawer in his desk and pulls out 3 small glasses and a decanter of amber liquid. With deliberate movements, he pours a splash into each glass, then pushes one toward your mother. And one toward you. Sir, you say, staring at the glass in confusion. A small measure of brandy, he says, his voice oddly gentle, medicinal under the circumstances. Your mother starts to protest, but Father holds up his hand. The boy is old enough to know our situation. He's old enough for a sip of brandy. You reach for the glass, feeling as if you've stepped into some strange alternate world where Victorian fathers suddenly treat their children like small adults. The liquid burns your throat as you sip it, and you struggle not to cough. Father's mouth twitches at your expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "I had my first brandy at about your age," he says, "when my father's shipping venture collapsed in 32. This revelation that father was once a boy, that his family too faced hardship, is as startling as being offered alcohol. What happened then, you ask, emboldened by the brandy and this strange new dynamic? We survived, he says simply, as will we now. He sets his glass down and steeples his fingers, studying you with an intensity that makes you want to squirm. "Henry, I'm going to ask something of you that I would not ordinarily ask of a child." You straighten in your chair, trying to look worthy of whatever adult responsibility is coming. In Yorkshire, things will be different. Your mother will need your assistance. With Emily, with household matters, I may be required to travel, to meet with investors, to salvage what I can of the business. "I'll help," you promise instantly. "I'll do whatever is needed, sir." He nods, satisfied. "I know you will. You're an Armitage." The praise, so rarely given, warms you more than the brandy, but there's something else in his expression, something that looks almost like regret. "There's one other matter," he says, reaching into his waistcoat pocket. He withdraws a small, worn leather case and places it on the desk between you. "This belonged to my father and his father before him." With careful fingers, you open the case. Inside lies a silver pocket watch, its surface engraved with an intricate pattern of oak leaves. When you press the catch, it opens to reveal a white face with elegant black numerals and hands. "It's tradition to pass it to one's son when he comes of age," father continues. "You're still some years from that milestone, but circumstances..." He trails off, clearing his throat. "In any case, it seems prudent to ensure you have it now." The implication sits heavy in your chest. Father is giving you this now because he fears what the future holds, because he cannot guarantee he'll be able to maintain this cornerstone of middle-class respectability, the passing of heirlooms from father to son. "I'll treasure it, sir," you say, your voice thick with emotion that a proper Victorian boy should never display. "See that you do," he replies gruffly, "and keep it private. No need to advertise our situation more than necessary." Your mother rises suddenly, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. "I should check on Emily and begin making arrangements." Father nods, and she glides from the room, closing the door softly behind her. You move to follow, the watch clutched in your hand. "Henry," father says, stopping you. "A moment more, if you please." You turn back, uncertain. The study feels different without your mother's presence, more intimate, more dangerous somehow. Father stands and moves to the bookshelf, running his fingers along the spines as if searching for something. "You read the newspapers," he says, not looking at you. "Yes, sir, when permitted." "And what do you make of this American conflict?" The question startles you. Father has never asked your opinion on current events, on anything, really. I think it's about slavery, sir, about whether it's right to own people." He selects a book and pulls it free. A simple view, but not incorrect. "And what do you think? Is it right to own people?" This feels like a test, though you can't imagine the correct answer. "No, sir," you say finally. "I don't believe it is." He nods slowly. "And yet, our family fortune, what remains of it, was built on cotton picked by enslaved hands." He turns to face you, the book held against his chest like a shield. "Does that trouble you?" The question is so far outside the realm of normal father-son conversations in your household that you struggle to form an answer. Victorian children aren't supposed to have opinions on complex moral issues. They're meant to absorb their parents' views without question. I hadn't considered it, sir. No. Why would you? Children are sheltered from such concerns. He looks down at the book in his hands. Perhaps too sheltered. He extends the book towards you. Take this. Read it when you can do so privately. You accept it, glancing at the title embossed in gold on the spine. Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. This book, you ask, confused? But isn't it American? It is, and controversial. Your mother would not approve. He returns to his desk, creating distance between you again, which is why you will read it discreetly. It may help you understand what's happening across the Atlantic, and why our family finds itself in its current predicament. You clutch the book to your chest, beside yourself with confusion. Father giving you contraband literature, father discussing slavery and business failures and family honor, all in one afternoon. It's as if the entire world has tilted on its axis. Sir, you venture, may I ask a question? He sighs, suddenly looking exhausted. You may. Are you frightened about what's happening? The question hangs in the air between you, so improper, so direct that you immediately regret asking it. A proper Victorian child would never dare to suggest their father experienced something as human as fear. For a long moment he simply stares at you, then very quietly he says, "Yes, Henry, I am." The admission, this crack in the impenetrable wall of Victorian fatherhood, leaves you speechless. "That will be all," he says, turning away to stare out the window. "Please close the door on your way out." Just like that, the moment of unprecedented honesty is over. You're dismissed, returned to your proper place in the hierarchy. But as you leave, clutching the forbidden book and the ancestral watch, you realize something has fundamentally changed. For the first time, you've seen behind the mask of Victorian fatherhood. You've glimpsed the man behind the starched collar and stern pronouncements. A man who fears failure, who worries for his family's future, who perhaps loves his children more deeply than his era's rigid customs allow him to express. You pause at the door, looking back at his silhouette against the window. In that moment he seems smaller somehow, human-sized rather than the towering figure of authority who has dominated your childhood. "Father," you say softly, the word feeling different in your mouth now. He doesn't turn. "Yes?" What you want to say is something no Victorian child would ever say to their father. "I understand. I'm scared too. We'll face this together." Instead, you say, "Thank you for the watch and the book." He nods once, still facing the window. "You're welcome, son." Son, not Henry or boy, but son. The word wraps around you like a blanket, warming places inside you that have always been cold. You close the door quietly behind you, your mind reeling from everything that's happened. The financial ruin, the move to Yorkshire, the unprecedented glimpse into father's inner world. As you climb the stairs back to your room, you realize you're clutching the pocket watch so tightly that its pattern is imprinting on your palm. You ease your grip, opening your hand to study it properly. Only then do you notice something engraved inside the case, below the clock face. Tiny letters, almost worn away with time. "To my beloved son, may you always find your way home." Home. A word that meant one thing this morning and something entirely different now. No longer the elegant London townhouse with its strict routines and rigid hierarchies, but something more fluid, more fragile. Home is where father will be, where mother and Emily will be, where the four of you will face whatever comes next, not as the perfect Victorian family presenting a flawless facade to society, but as real people with fears and hopes and unspoken love. You tuck the watch and book beneath your mattress for safekeeping and return to your mathematics problems. But the numbers swim before your eyes, suddenly insignificant in the face of all you've learned. In 2 weeks, everything will change. The carefully constructed world of your Victorian childhood will crumble away, revealing something rawer, truer beneath. And somehow, despite all the uncertainty ahead, you feel a strange, buoyant hope. Because today, in his study, father called you son in a tone that held more warmth than formality. Because today, the impenetrable wall between Victorian fathers and their children developed its first precious crack. Outside your window, London continues its bustling afternoon rhythms, unaware that inside these walls a small revolution has taken place, not with flags or proclamations, but with a shared glass of brandy, a silver pocket watch, and 3 simple words. Yes, I'm afraid. The days after father's revelation pass in a flurry of hushed conversations behind closed doors and servants being summoned for tearful dismissals. Your once orderly Victorian household has become a hive of barely controlled chaos as mother sorts through possessions, deciding what can be taken to Yorkshire and what must be sold. Emily remains blissfully unaware of the coming changes. At 7 years old, she inhabits the sheltered world of the nursery, playing with her porcelain-faced doll and practicing her needlework under the watchful eye of her governess, Miss Winters. You've kept father's secrets, both the watch beneath your mattress and the dire financial situation. The weight of adult knowledge sits heavy on your shoulders, making you feel simultaneously older than your years and terribly, frighteningly small. 3 days after father's return, your mother makes an unexpected announcement at breakfast. Your father has suggested we might spend Sunday afternoon at the Crystal Palace, she says, carefully buttering a piece of toast. The weather is expected to be pleasant. You nearly drop your spoon in surprise. The Crystal Palace, that magnificent glass structure housing exhibitions of art and industry, is a favourite destination for London families of means. Under normal circumstances, an outing there would be unremarkable. But these are not normal circumstances. All of us, you ask, unable to hide your shock. Indeed, mother replies, her eyes meeting yours briefly with a warning to maintain composure. Your father believes we should enjoy London's attractions while we still reside here. The true meaning is clear. This may be your last chance to visit such places before financial ruin forces your retreat to Yorkshire. Emily claps her hands in delight, oblivious to the subtext. Will there be the exotic birds, Mamma, and the glass fountain? Yes, dear, all the usual exhibits. And will father really come with us? Emily presses, her excitement revealing how rare such family outings truly are. In most Victorian families, fathers exist at the periphery of children's daily lives, appearing at designated times and for specific purposes, to lead prayers, dispense discipline, or evaluate educational progress. The idea of father voluntarily spending an afternoon in the company of his children is almost as shocking as the financial revelations in his study. Yes, your father will accompany us, Mother confirms, her tone suggesting this topic requires no further discussion. Sunday arrives with unexpected sunshine, a rarity in London's typically grey spring. The household erupts in a flurry of preparation. For a Victorian family outing, appearance is everything. Even in the privacy of your financial distress, public perception must be maintained at all costs. Emily is dressed in her finest, a pale blue dress with intricate smocking white stockings and polished black boots. Her chestnut hair is arranged in careful ringlets beneath a straw bonnet trimmed with silk flowers. You're buttoned into your Sunday best, a jacket and short pants that reveal your knees, a clear sign that you're still a child, much to your chagrin, a starched white collar that scratches your neck, and your best boots, polished to a mirror, shine by the boot boy, who will soon be seeking new employment. Mother descends the stairs in a walking dress of deep green, her waist impossibly small thanks to the corset beneath, her hat secured with long pins that look capable of skewering small game. Despite the chaos of recent days, she looks every inch the respectable Victorian matron. And then there's Father, standing in the entrance hall in his Sunday suit, top hat in hand, looking uncomfortable but determined. His beard has been freshly trimmed, his shoes gleam, and not a speck of dust mars his black wool coat. No one observing him would guess that this man stands on the precipice of financial ruin. "Are we all prepared?" he asks, surveying his family with a critical eye. "Yes, Charles," Mother responds, adjusting her gloves. "The children have been reminded of proper behaviour in public." Father's gaze shifts to you and Emily. "Remember, you represent the Armitage name. I expect nothing less than exemplary conduct." "Yes, Father," you both chorus, the familiar refrain of childhood. The journey to the Crystal Palace involves a hansom cab, an expense that makes your mother's lips tighten slightly, and then a train ride. The carriage is crowded with other families similarly dressed in their Sunday best, all maintaining the careful distance that propriety demands. Emily sits beside Mother, practically vibrating with excitement, but remembering to keep her voice low and her hands folded in her lap. You sit next to Father, acutely aware of his presence, the faint smell of tobacco and shaving soap, the careful way he holds himself so his sleeve doesn't touch yours. "Sir," you venture quietly, "will there be time to see the geological exhibit?" Father glances down at you, something like surprise flickering across his features. "You have an interest in geology?" "Yes, sir. Mr. Finch showed us specimens in natural science lessons. I particularly enjoyed the ammonites." A strange expression crosses Father's face, almost like pleasure, quickly concealed. "I see. Well, I suppose we might make time for the geological section." It's not quite approval, but it's something, a recognition of your interests, a small concession to your preferences. In the carefully controlled world of Victorian childhood, this tiny acknowledgement feels momentous. The Crystal Palace comes into view as you exit the train station, a massive structure of glass and iron glittering in the spring sunshine like something from a fairy tale. Built for the Great Exhibition of 1851 and later moved to Sydenham Hill, it stands as a monument to British ingenuity and imperial might. Emily gasps audibly, earning a gentle remonstration from Mother about ladylike restraint, but you notice Father's mouth twitch slightly at her excitement. Inside, the palace is a wonderland of exhibitions, technological marvels, exotic plants, educational displays, and artistic treasures. The vastness of the space makes you feel tiny, a speck beneath the soaring glass ceiling. Hundreds of other visitors move through the exhibits, all maintaining the careful dance of Victorian public interaction, acknowledging acquaintances with precise nods, keeping voices modulated, children held firmly in check. "We shall proceed in an orderly fashion," Father announces, consulting the guidebook, beginning with the industrial achievement section. Not the most thrilling start for children, but you know better than to protest. Emily's face falls slightly, but she quickly composes herself, remembering her role as a properly behaved Victorian child. The industrial exhibition proves unexpectedly fascinating, filled with steam-powered contraptions and manufacturing innovations. Father moves through the displays with evident knowledge, occasionally stopping to explain a particular mechanism. "This is a power loom," he tells you, indicating a massive iron apparatus, similar to those used in our Manchester factory, the ones that now stand idle. You think, but don't say. "The thread passes through here," he continues, tracing the path with his finger, and the shuttle carries the weft thread back and forth to create the fabric. You've never heard him speak so animatedly about his business. It strikes you suddenly that Father might actually enjoy his work. Not just as a means of providing for his family, but for the fascinating machinery and processes involved. "Were you always interested in textiles, Father?" you ask, emboldened by his unusual openness. He straightens, looking momentarily startled by the personal question. Yes, I suppose I was. My father expected me to enter the church, but I preferred more practical pursuits." This tiny glimpse into Father's past, the revelation that he once defied his own father's expectations, feels like discovering a secret passageway in a familiar house. "The machines are quite ingenious," you offer, testing this new conversational territory. Indeed, though the human cost is considerable, his expression darkens. "The mill workers endure conditions that you and Emily have been fortunate to never witness." Another shock. Father expressing concern for the working classes, the same man who, until recently, you'd imagined cared only for profit and propriety. Before you can pursue this surprising turn, Emily tugs at Mother's sleeve. "Mama, might we see the fountains now, please?" Mother glances at Father, who consults his pocket watch. "We shall proceed to the natural history section," he decides. "The fountains will be our final destination." Emily's face falls, but she doesn't argue. Victorian children learn early that adult decisions are not to be questioned. As you move toward the natural history exhibits, you notice Father's hand briefly touch the small of Mother's back, a tiny gesture of affection rarely displayed in public. She looks up at him with a soft expression that transforms her usually composed features. They love each other, you realize with surprise? Not just in the formal contractual way of Victorian marriages, but with genuine affection. How have you never noticed this before? The natural history section proves to be Emily's undoing. The glass cases containing preserved exotic animals, some posed in lifelike hunting stances, fascinate and terrify her in equal measure. When you reach the tiger display, she suddenly bursts into tears. "Emily!" Mother hisses, mortified by this public display of emotion. "Compose yourself immediately." But Emily's sobs only intensify, drawing disapproving glances from nearby visitors. A properly raised Victorian child simply doesn't behave this way in public. Mother looks desperately at Father, clearly expecting him to deliver a stern reprimand. Instead, to everyone's astonishment, he kneels down to Emily's level, a most undignified position for a Victorian gentleman. "Emily," he says, his voice gentle but firm, "look at me." She raises her tear-streaked face, hiccuping slightly. "The tiger cannot harm you. It is merely preserved for educational purposes. But it looks so fierce, she stammers. And the poor little deer it's attacking. Father hesitates, clearly navigating unfamiliar emotional territory. Would you prefer to see the mineral collection instead? I believe there are some rather colourful crystals. Emily nods, her tears subsiding at this unexpected concession. Father stands, straightening his jacket and clearing his throat. Very well. Margaret, perhaps you might take Emily to view the minerals while Henry and I examine the geological specimens we discussed earlier. Mother looks momentarily surprised at this division of the family, but quickly recovers. Of course. Come along, Emily. And just like that, you find yourself alone with Father, an unprecedented situation outside the formal confines of his study. As Mother and Emily disappear into the crowd, Father turns to you with an expression that might almost be described as conspiratorial. I believe the Ammonites are this way. You follow him through the exhibition halls, maintaining a proper distance but feeling strangely connected nonetheless. The geological display is tucked in a quieter corner of the palace, less crowded than the more popular exhibits. Father stops before a glass case containing spiral-shaped fossils embedded in stone. Ammonites, he says, marine creatures that lived millions of years ago, according to modern scientific theory. You step closer to the case, genuinely fascinated. Mr. Finch says they're evidence of the Great Flood described in the Bible. Father makes a non-committal sound. There are various interpretations. Science and faith need not always be at odds. This is dangerously close to progressive thinking, the kind that proper Victorian gentlemen might discuss in private clubs but rarely share with their children. Did you enjoy science as a boy, Father? You ask, pushing your luck with another personal question. He studies the fossils, his expression distant. I did. My own father considered it a frivolous interest compared to theological studies. But you became a businessman instead. Necessity often dictates our paths more than preference, Henry. He moves to the next case containing polished gemstones. I had hoped to travel, to see the geological wonders of the world firsthand. The Grand Canyon, the white cliffs of Dover, the volcanic formations of Iceland. The wistfulness in his voice is so unexpected, so human, that you momentarily forget the proper distance between Victorian fathers and sons. You still could, couldn't you? Someday? He gives you a sidelong glance that contains equal parts surprise and appreciation. Perhaps, though circumstances at present make such aspirations rather fanciful. You touch the pocket where his watch is carefully stored. When we move to Yorkshire, will there be fossils there too? Indeed. The coastline near Whitby is famous for them. Perhaps. He hesitates, then continues with careful casualness. Perhaps we might examine them together, if business affairs permit. Your heart leaps at this unprecedented suggestion, a planned activity with Father pursuing a shared interest. Nothing could be further from the rigid, formal relationship you've always known. I would like that very much, sir, you respond, trying to maintain proper decorum despite your excitement. Father nods, seemingly embarrassed by his own suggestion. We should rejoin your mother and sister. The fountain display will begin shortly. As you make your way back through the crowded exhibition halls, you notice Father walking more slowly than usual, allowing you to keep pace without struggling. Another small adjustment, another crack in the facade of Victorian fatherhood. You find Mother and Emily by the refreshment stand, where Emily is delicately eating an ice cream, a rare treat that suggests Mother is compensating for the earlier tears. Charles, there you are, Mother says, relief evident in her voice. I was beginning to worry you'd been waylaid. Henry and I were examining the geological specimens, Father explains, as if spending time alone with his son is the most natural thing in the world. Is that ice cream, Emily? Emily nods, suddenly wary of potential disapproval. Mama said I might have some since I was very good at the mineral exhibit. To everyone's surprise, Father reaches into his pocket and produces a few coins. Perhaps Henry would like one as well. This unexpected generosity, especially given your family's financial situation, leaves you momentarily speechless. Mother gives Father a questioning look, which he answers with an almost imperceptible shrug. "Thank you, Father," you manage, accepting the coins with proper gratitude. While you wait in line at the refreshment stand, you observe your parents from a distance. They stand close together, Mother's hand resting lightly on Father's arm as they speak in low voices. There's an intimacy between them that you've rarely witnessed, as if the public mask has slipped just slightly, revealing the true partnership beneath. The ice cream is sweet and cold on your tongue, a simple pleasure that seems more precious now that you understand the precariousness of your family's situation. You savor each bite, watching Emily's delight as she finishes her own portion. The fountain display will commence in 5 minutes, Father announces, consulting his watch. Not the family heirloom now hidden in your pocket, but his everyday timepiece. We should secure a favorable vantage point. The central fountain is the Crystal Palace's crowning glory, an elaborate system of water jets and coloured lights that draws gasps of appreciation from the assembled crowd. Father positions your family at the edge of the viewing area, Emily hoisted onto his shoulders for a better view, an unusually physical interaction that draws surprised glances from nearby visitors. As the water dances and the coloured lights shimmer, you steal glances at your father's face. His expression has softened, the stern lines eased by what might actually be enjoyment. With Emily perched on his shoulders, her small hands resting on his head for balance, he looks less like the intimidating patriarch of your daily life and more like, well, like a father. A proper Victorian father, certainly. Still formal in his speech, still conscious of appearances, still the unquestioned authority in your family, but also a man with dreams of seeing geological wonders, a man who defied his own father to pursue his interests, a man who kneels to comfort his crying daughter regardless of social propriety. As the fountain reaches its spectacular finale, jets of water soaring nearly to the glass ceiling, Emily lets out a delighted squeal that would normally earn a reprimand, but Father merely adjusts his grip on her legs, securing her more firmly on his shoulders. "It's magnificent, isn't it?" he says, and you're not sure if he's speaking to Emily or to all of you. "The most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Emily declares with absolute conviction. "You said the same about the butterfly conservatory," you remind her with brotherly teasing. "Both can be true," Father says unexpectedly. "Beauty need not be ranked in order of preference, Henry." This philosophical observation from the man who insists on precise hierarchies in all things, from the household staff to your academic subjects, is yet another surprise in a day full of them. As the crowd begins to disperse, Father lifts Emily down from his shoulders and straightens his jacket. The brief moment of relaxed fatherhood passes, and he resumes his usual dignified posture. "We should begin our journey home," he announces. "It would not do to be caught in the evening rush." The return trip passes in contented silence. Emily falls asleep against Mother's shoulder, exhausted by the day's excitement. You find yourself fighting your own drooping eyelids, lulled by the train's rhythm. Just as you're about to succumb to sleep, you feel something unexpected, the slight pressure of Father's hand on your shoulder, steadying you as the train rounds a curve. The touch lasts only a moment before he withdraws, resuming the proper Victorian distance. But that brief contact, so rare, so precious in your physically restrained household, sends warmth spreading through your chest. It's not a hug or an embrace. Victorian fathers don't offer those, at least not outside the nursery years, but it's something. a wordless acknowledgement of connection. As London's buildings come into view, father clears his throat softly. I have received word from Yorkshire. The cottage will be ready for our arrival next week. Reality crashes back. The financial ruin, the imminent move, the end of life as you've known it. Mother's hand tightens on her reticule, but her expression remains calm. So soon? She asks quietly, careful not to wake Emily. It seems advisable to depart before certain parties become aware of our situation. Father's voice is equally low. We shall leave on Thursday morning. Thursday. 4 days from now. 4 days to pack up your childhood and say silent goodbyes to friends who can never know the truth of your departure. May I bring my books? You ask, thinking of your small collection of adventure stories and the secret volume from father still hidden beneath your mattress. A reasonable selection, father allows. Space will be limited. The train pulls into the station, jolting Emily awake. She blinks sleepily, then brightens as she remembers the day's adventures. That was the best day ever, she declares with childish absolutism. Can we go again next Sunday? An uncomfortable silence falls. Next Sunday, you'll be in Yorkshire, miles from London's attractions. We shall find new adventures in Yorkshire, Mother says finally, smoothing Emily's rumpled hair. The countryside has its own pleasures. Emily's forehead wrinkles in confusion. Yorkshire? Are we going on holiday? The moment has come sooner than expected. Father looks at Mother, who nods slightly. Emily, Father says, his voice gentler than you've ever heard it, we have some news to share with you. As the family disembarks from the train, moving through the crowded station with Emily's questions growing increasingly distressed, you notice Father's hand resting protectively on her small shoulder, not the distant Victorian patriarch from your early childhood, but a man trying, within the severe constraints of his era and upbringing, to comfort his daughter through an upheaval he himself has caused. And you realise that the Crystal Palace outing wasn't merely a last hurrah before financial disgrace. It was Father's attempt to give his children a final happy memory of London, a gesture of love expressed not in words or embraces, but in the currency most available to a Victorian father: experiences, allowances, small permissions. As you step out into the fading afternoon light, the pocket watch rests heavy against your chest, a constant reminder of all that has changed and all that remains uncertain. But beside it, lighter but equally significant, rests the memory of Father's hand on your shoulder, steadying you as the world shifts beneath your feet. In 4 days, everything you know will be left behind. But perhaps, you think with cautious hope, something new and unexpected might be found in its place. The next 3 days pass in a blur of packing trunks, sorting possessions, and tearful goodbyes to the remaining servants. Emily, now aware of the impending move, vacillates between excitement about the countryside and distress over leaving her familiar world. Will there be other children to play with? She asks repeatedly, clutching her porcelain doll to her chest. I'm sure there will be, Mother answers with the strained patience of someone answering the same question for the dozenth time. And you'll have Henry for company, of course. You don't point out that an 11-year-old boy might have better things to do than entertain his 7-year-old sister. The truth is, in this sea of change, Emily's familiar presence is one of the few constants you can cling to. Father is rarely home, spending long hours in the city attempting to salvage what he can of the business. When he does return, late in the evenings, he disappears into his study with a glass of brandy and a stack of papers. The lines around his eyes grow deeper each day. The night before your departure dawns with an unexpected thunderstorm. Rain lashes against the windows and lightning illuminates the half-packed house in ghostly flashes. You lie awake, listening to the thunder and thinking of tomorrow's journey. The cottage in Yorkshire seems both terrifyingly real and impossibly distant. Unable to sleep, you slip from bed and retrieve Father's book from its hiding place beneath the mattress. Uncle Tom's cabin has proven to be a revelation, a window into the American situation that Father had spoken of, a complex moral tale that has left you with more questions than answers. You've been reading it in small increments by candlelight after you're meant to be asleep. A particularly violent crack of thunder makes you jump, and you nearly drop the candle. Steadying your hand, you return to the page, losing yourself in the story of Eliza's escape across the ice. The scream, when it comes, is so unexpected that at first you think it's part of the story, but it comes again. Emily's voice, high and terrified, from the nursery down the hall. You bolt from bed, still clutching the book. The nursery door is closed, but orange light flickers from beneath it. Fire. Without hesitation, you throw open the door. The scene inside stops your heart. A fallen candle has ignited the nursery curtains, which are now a wall of flame. Emily stands frozen in the middle of the room, nightgown white against the orange glow, screaming but seemingly unable to move. "Emily!" you shout, dropping the book and rushing toward her. "Come here now!" But she remains paralyzed, her wide eyes fixed on the rapidly spreading fire. The heat is intense, the smoke already thickening the air. You grab her arm and pull, but she resists, reaching toward her bed. "My doll, I can't leave her." The porcelain doll sits propped against her pillow, her painted face eerily serene as flames lick closer to the bedspread. "Leave it," you order, coughing as smoke fills your lungs. "We have to go." But Emily is inconsolable, fighting your grip with surprising strength. "No, Papa gave her to me, I can't leave her." The fire spreads with terrifying speed, feeding on the dry fabric and wooden furniture. You realize with a jolt of panic that the doorway, your only exit, will soon be blocked by flames. "Help!" you shout, your voice cracking. "Fire help!" The sound of running footsteps in the hall, and then a shape fills the doorway. Father, his hair dishevelled from sleep, wearing only his nightshirt and trousers, hastily pulled on. "Henry, Emily," his voice cuts through the roar of the fire. "Come here at once." But Emily remains stubbornly in place, still reaching for her doll. "Papa, my doll." Without hesitation, Father plunges into the smoke-filled room. In 3 long strides, he reaches Emily's bed, snatches the doll, and grabs Emily with his free arm, lifting her bodily from the floor. "Henry, out," he commands, pushing you toward the door with his elbow, while carrying Emily and her precious doll. The 3 of you stumble into the hallway just as the nursery curtains collapse in a shower of sparks. Mother stands in the corridor, her face white with terror, a shawl hastily thrown over her nightgown. "The servants!" Father barks, handing Emily to her. "Wake them all, send James for the fire brigade." Mother hesitates only a moment before rushing toward the servants' quarters, Emily clutched to her chest, the doll dangling from her hand. Father turns to you, his face transformed by urgency. Gone is the reserved Victorian patriarch, replaced by something more primal, a man fighting to protect his family. His hair falls across his forehead, his feet are bare, and soot smudges his cheek. "Are you hurt?" he demands, his hands gripping your shoulders. You shake your head, still coughing from the smoke. "Good lad, now help me. We must contain this before it spreads." What follows is a frantic battle against the flames. The remaining servants form a bucket chain from the water pump in the kitchen, passing containers of water hand to hand. Father, stripped down to his shirt sleeves, works alongside the footman and the gardener, his social position temporarily forgotten in the face of emergency. You join the effort, passing buckets with hands that blister and burn. The heat is overwhelming, the smoke choking. Somewhere in the distance, church bells ring the alarm, summoning neighbours to help. After what seems like hours, but is probably only minutes, the fire brigade arrives with their pump wagon. Professional firefighters take over, directing powerful streams of water into the nursery. Gradually, the roar of the flames subsides, replaced by the hiss of steam and the crash of sodden plaster falling from the ceiling. When it's finally over, the nursery is a blackened shell, but the fire has been contained to that single room. The rest of the house stands, water damaged but intact. In the kitchen, the family gathers in a state of dishevelment that would be scandalous under normal circumstances. Mother sits with Emily on her lap, both of them wrapped in blankets, Emily still clutching her smoke-stained doll. The remaining servants, James the footman, Mrs. Pottinger the housekeeper, and Thomas the gardener, hover nearby, equally shaken. And Father is transformed. His white shirt is black with soot, his hair wild, his hands raw from handling wet ropes and buckets. But it's his face that shows the most radical change. The careful mask of Victorian propriety completely gone, replaced by naked relief as he looks at you and Emily, alive and relatively unharmed. "Thank God," he says simply, his voice rough from smoke. You've never heard him invoke the deity except in formal prayers or as mild exclamations. This sounds like a genuine expression of gratitude directed at an actual god rather than a social convention. The fire chief says it was fortunate we caught it when we did, he continues, accepting a cup of tea from Mrs. Pottinger with a nod of thanks. Another few minutes and the entire upper floor might have been lost. Emily bursts into tears, burying her face against Mother's shoulder. "It's my fault I lit the candle because I was scared of the thunder. Then I fell asleep and it fell over." Mother strokes her hair, murmuring soothing words, but it's Father who moves to kneel before her, his sooty face level with hers. Another unprecedented breach of patriarchal distance. "Emily," he says firmly, "look at me." She raises her tear-streaked face. "You made a mistake. A serious one, yes, but a mistake nonetheless. What matters is that you are safe, that everyone is safe. But the N nursery is ruined," she wails, "and we're leaving tomorrow, and everything is terrible." Father's expression softens in a way you've never witnessed before. "The nursery is just a room. Rooms can be rebuilt. You and Henry, you cannot be replaced." The simple statement hangs in the air, profound in its departure from Victorian emotional restraint. Fathers simply didn't speak this way, openly acknowledging the value of their children as individuals rather than as extensions of family honour or duty. Emily hiccups, her sobs subsiding. "You're not angry with me?" "I am relieved you are unharmed," Father replies carefully. "That is my primary concern at present." It's not quite the effusive forgiveness a modern parent might offer, but for a Victorian father, it's extraordinarily gentle. Mother shifts Emily on her lap. "Charles, perhaps the children should try to rest for a few hours. Dawn will be here soon, and we still have the journey ahead." Father nods, rising stiffly from his kneeling position. His back must ache from the firefighting efforts, though he'd never admit to such weakness. Yes, that would be advisable, though perhaps not in their usual rooms given the smoke damage. The drawing room settees could be made up, Mrs. Pottinger suggests. "See to it," Father agrees, then turns to you. "Henry, a word before you retire." Your stomach tightens instinctively. Despite everything that's happened tonight, the summons for a word still triggers anxiety. Father leads you to his study, which smells faintly of smoke, but is otherwise untouched by the fire. To your surprise, he doesn't go behind his desk, the usual position of authority for parental pronouncements. Instead, he gestures to two leather armchairs by the cold fireplace. "Sit," he says, lowering himself into one chair with a barely suppressed groan. You perch on the edge of the other chair, uncertain what to expect. Father studies you for a long moment, his face unreadable in the dim light of the oil lamp. "You went into the nursery," he says finally, "when you heard Emily scream. It's not a question, but you answer anyway." "Yes, sir." Without hesitation, from what I observed. "She was in danger, sir." He nods slowly. "Indeed she was, and you placed yourself in danger to help her." You're not sure how to respond to this statement of fact, so you remain silent. That was... Father seems to search for the right word. Commendable. The praise, so rare and unexpected, warms you more than the tea you'd sipped in the kitchen. "Thank you, sir." Father leans forward slightly, wincing as some hidden muscle protests the movement. "You know, when I was approximately your age, my younger brother fell through the ice on a pond near our home." This sudden, voluntary sharing of personal history shocks you into stillness. Father never speaks of his childhood or his family. Did you help him?" you venture when he doesn't continue. "I did not," Father says flatly. "I ran for assistance instead." The rational choice, perhaps, but he trails off, his gaze distant. By the time help arrived, he had been in the water nearly 10 minutes. He survived, but his lungs were never the same. He died of pneumonia 3 years later. The weight of this confession, this glimpse into a formative tragedy, leaves you speechless. "I have often wondered," Father continues, almost as if speaking to himself, "whether a different choice on my part might have resulted in a different outcome." "But you were just a boy," you protest. "What could you have done?" "What you did tonight," he says simply. "Act without calculation. Put another's safety before your own." The comparison seems wildly unfair. "The nursery fire wasn't the same as falling through ice, sir." "Perhaps not, but the instinct, or lack thereof, is the same." Father straightens in his chair, visibly pulling himself back from wherever his memories had taken him. "In any case, your actions tonight were those of a young man, not a boy. I am proud of you, Henry. Proud. The word you've waited your entire life to hear from his lips. It feels simultaneously monumental and somehow insufficient, as if the relationship between you has evolved beyond the simple dynamic of a child seeking a father's approval. "Thank you, Father," you say quietly. He nods once, then gestures to something on the floor near your feet. "I believe this belongs to you." You look down and feel your blood freeze. There, on the carpet, lies Uncle Tom's Cabin, the forbidden book you must have dropped in your rush to help Emily, the book you were specifically instructed to read privately. I can explain, sir," you stammer. To your astonishment, Father's mouth twitches in what might almost be amusement. "I imagine you were reading it by candlelight after you were meant to be asleep." Your silence confirms his suspicion. "Just as I did with my father's copy of The Count of Monte Cristo at your age," he adds, surprising you yet again, "though I trust Mrs. Stowe's work provided more moral edification than Dumas offered me." He's not angry, he's reminiscing about his own childhood transgression. The world has surely turned upside down. "It's a powerful book, sir," you say carefully. "Indeed it is." "And what did you make of it?" This is not the conversation you expected to be having at 3 in the morning in a smoke-damaged house hours after nearly perishing in a fire, but you gather your thoughts nonetheless. I think it's complicated, sir, more complicated than I understood before. Father nods slowly. Most important matters are, Henry. The world rarely divides neatly into right and wrong, however much we might wish it to. From the man who has always presented moral choices as absolute and unambiguous, this philosophical nuance is yet another revelation. The American war has complex origins and will have far-reaching consequences, he continues, for them and for families like ours who depended on their cotton. Is that why we're going to Yorkshire, sir? Because of slavery in America? In part, though as I've learned tonight, perhaps there are more important considerations than business or social standing. He looks at you directly, his expression more open than you've ever seen it. Family, for instance. The simple statement from a man who has always placed duty and propriety above emotional attachments feels revolutionary. Now, he says, straightening and becoming more recognizably himself. You should get what rest you can. Tomorrow's journey will proceed as planned, though perhaps with fewer possessions than anticipated. You stand, recognizing the dismissal, but hesitate before turning to leave. Father? Yes? Henry? I'm sorry about your brother. I didn't know you had one. Something flickers across his face. Pain, perhaps, or regret. Robert, he says softly. His name was Robert. The rare offering of this personal detail feels like a gift, one more precious than the watch or the compass. Thank you for telling me about him, you say. Father nods once, then turns to stare into the cold fireplace, effectively ending the conversation. But as you reach the study door, his voice stops you once more. Henry? Yes, sir? I am glad you were not harmed tonight. It's not quite "I love you." No Victorian father would say those words aloud to a son old enough to wear short pants. But in the context of everything that has happened, the financial ruin, the move, the fire, the unprecedented personal revelations, it feels like the closest equivalent possible within the constraints of his era and upbringing. Thank you, Father, you say quietly. So am I. As you make your way to the drawing room where Mrs. Pottinger has prepared makeshift beds, you find Emily already asleep on one settee, her doll clutched tightly in her arms. You settle onto the other, pulling a blanket up to your chin. Despite the trauma of the night, despite the uncertainty of tomorrow's journey and the life that awaits in Yorkshire, you feel a strange sense of peace. The walls between you and Father have not exactly crumbled, but they have developed significant cracks, allowing glimpses of the man behind the patriarchal mask. A man who once lost a brother, a man who values his children above property or propriety, a man who can admit to pride, to relief, even to philosophical uncertainty. As you drift towards sleep, you realize that the fire, frightening as it was, has burned away something more than just the nursery furnishings. It has scorched the careful facade of Victorian fatherhood, revealing the human heart beating beneath starched collars and stern pronouncements. Tomorrow you leave London, your social position, and the only life you've ever known, but you carry with you something you didn't possess before, a deeper understanding of the complex man who is your father, and the knowledge that beneath his reserve lies a capacity for love that perhaps even he doesn't fully comprehend. Outside, the storm has passed. Rain taps gently against the windows, washing away the smell of smoke, cleansing the world for whatever comes next. The journey to Yorkshire is long and uncomfortable, even in first-class carriages that father insists on despite their financial situation. Appearances must be maintained, he murmurs to mother when she questions the expense, but you notice him wince slightly when he hands over the fare. Emily sleeps for much of the trip, exhausted from the night's drama. Your own eyes feel gritty from smoke and lack of sleep, but excitement keeps you alert, face pressed to the window as London's crowded streets give way to rolling countryside. Father sits opposite you, a newspaper spread before him, though you notice he rarely turns the pages. His mind seems elsewhere, his gaze occasionally drifting to the passing landscape. Once, catching you watching him, he doesn't frown or look away as he once might have. Instead, he offers something almost like a smile. "Different from London, isn't it?" he says, nodding toward the green fields beyond the window. "Yes, sir, much more open." Yorkshire has its own beauty, harsher than the southern counties perhaps, but honest in its way. The poetic observation surprises you. Father has never before commented on beauty of any kind. "Did you visit Uncle William often as a boy?" you venture, testing this new, more conversational relationship. "Every summer until I was sent to school," he replies, folding his newspaper. "My brother and I would spend July and August exploring the moors, fishing in the streams, generally running wild in a way our father would never have permitted in London." The second mention of his brother, the one who fell through the ice, feels significant, as if a dam has broken, allowing these personal recollections to flow. "Will we be allowed to explore?" you ask. Father considers this, his expression thoughtful rather than automatically dismissive. "Within reasonable boundaries. The moors can be treacherous for those unfamiliar with them, but yes, I see no reason why you and Emily shouldn't become acquainted with the countryside." Mother, who has been pretending to read a book while actually watching this exchange with barely concealed astonishment, interjects gently, "The fresh air will do the children good after London's smoke." "Indeed," Father agrees, "though after last night I suspect they've had quite enough smoke to last a lifetime. It's almost a joke, certainly an attempt at lightness that would have been unthinkable from Father a week ago." Emily, stirring from her nap, misses the significance entirely, but you and Mother exchange surprised glances. The train journey ends at a small market town where Uncle William's carriage awaits to transport you the final miles to the cottage. The driver, a weathered man with a thick Yorkshire accent, nods respectfully to Father but shows none of the deference a London servant would display. "Master Charles," he says gruffly. "Been a long time since you visited these parts." "Indeed it has, Thaddeus," Father replies, shaking the man's hand rather than merely nodding in acknowledgement. "You're looking well. Can't complain. Your brother's eager to see you." The casual reference to Uncle William as "your brother" rather than by his proper title, and Father's acceptance of this familiarity, speaks volumes about the different social codes of rural Yorkshire. The carriage is plain but sturdy, drawn by two solid workhorses rather than the elegant matched pair that once pulled your London carriage. Emily, fully awake now, bounces excitedly on the leather seat. "Will there be cows?" she demands. "And sheep and chickens?" "I expect so," Mother replies, adjusting her hat, which has suffered somewhat during the journey. "Though we shall not be farming ourselves, Emily. The cottage comes with a small garden only." "Uncle has offered us use of his home farm products," Father adds. "Milk, eggs, the occasional lamb or beef joint." The charity implicit in this arrangement clearly pains him, though he masks it well. For a man accustomed to being the provider, accepting such help, even from family, must sting his pride. The carriage trundles through stone-walled fields and small villages of grey stone cottages. The landscape grows progressively wilder, the hills steeper until you're climbing into true moorland, vast expanses of purple heather and golden gorse stretching to the horizon. "Look, there," Father says suddenly, pointing to a distant structure on a hilltop. "Armitage Hall. Your great-grandfather built it when the textile trade first made the family fortune." You lean forward, studying the grand house with its many chimneys and formal gardens. "Is that where Uncle William lives?" "It is." "Why don't we live there?" Emily asks with a child's directness. "It's much bigger than our house in London." An uncomfortable silence falls. Father clears his throat. "The hall passed to your uncle as the eldest son. I established my own household and business in London after university." The simplified explanation omits whatever complex family dynamics led to this arrangement, but even this small insight into Father's past feels like a gift. The carriage turns down a narrow lane, and Father leans forward, his expression softening. "Ah, here we are. Moorside Cottage." Your new home comes into view, a sturdy stone building with a slate roof, much smaller than your London house, but charming in its way. Smoke curls from the chimney, suggesting someone has prepared for your arrival. A small garden bursts with late spring flowers, and an ancient oak tree spreads protective branches over one corner of the roof. "It's tiny," Emily exclaims, then claps her hand over her mouth, realizing too late the impropriety of her outburst. But Father only chuckles, an actual audible chuckle that makes Mother's eyebrows rise nearly to her hairline. "It is rather compact compared to Threadneedle Street," he agrees, "but it was my grandmother's dower house, and many happy childhood summers were spent here." The carriage halts before the front door, which opens to reveal a stout woman in an apron wiping her hands on a cloth. "Mrs. Thwaite," Father says, helping Mother down from the carriage. "You're looking well." "Master Charles," she replies with a curtsy that somehow manages to be both respectful and brisk. "It's good to see you again after all these years. I've got a hot meal waiting inside and the beds are aired." The simple, practical welcome seems to put Father at ease in a way London's elaborate social rituals never did. He introduces you and Emily, and Mrs. Thwaite studies you both with kind but assessing eyes. "Growing children need proper feeding," she declares. "Too pale, the both of you. London air's no good for young lungs. In London, such familiar commentary from a housekeeper would be unthinkable." But Father merely nods in agreement. "Indeed, Mrs. Thwaite, we're counting on Yorkshire to put roses in their cheeks." The cottage interior is simple but comfortable. The front door opens directly into a cosy sitting room with worn but quality furniture and a fireplace where a welcoming blaze crackles. Beyond lies a small dining room and a compact kitchen where delicious smells emanate. A narrow staircase leads to bedrooms above. No grand entrance hall, no separate morning room or drawing room or library, no servants' quarters or separate nursery, just a small, serviceable home where the family will live in much closer proximity than ever before. "I've put the young lady in the east bedroom," Mrs. Thwaite informs Mother. Master Henry has the small room adjoining Master Charles's old chamber. "I hope that suits." "Perfectly, Mrs. Thwaite, thank you," Mother replies, removing her gloves and hat. Her travel dress, elegant but practical, suddenly seems overdressed for these rustic surroundings. "Supper's near ready," Mrs. Thwaite continues. "I'll leave you to get settled. I live in the village. But I'll be here mornings to help with the cooking and cleaning." With that, she disappears into the kitchen, leaving the family to absorb their new circumstances. Emily immediately begins exploring, opening doors and exclaiming over discoveries. Mother follows, gently reminding her not to touch anything until they've washed the travel dust from their hands. Father stands in the center of the sitting room, looking both larger than usual in the small space and somehow more at home than he ever appeared in the London house. "Well, Henry," he says quietly, "what do you make of Moorside Cottage?" You consider the question carefully. The house is drastically smaller than your London home, with none of the elegant furnishings or modern conveniences you're accustomed to, but there's something about its sturdy stone walls and simple comforts that feels safe. "I like it, sir," you say honestly. "It feels like a home rather than a showcase," he suggests when you struggle to find the words. "Yes, exactly." He nods, satisfaction evident in his expression. "My thoughts precisely." When Mrs. Thwaite calls you to supper an hour later, you've washed away the journey's grime and changed into fresh clothes. The dining room table is smaller than the one in London, placing family members in closer proximity than the formal distance usually maintained at meals. The food is simple but abundant. Roast chicken, vegetables from the garden, fresh bread still warm from the oven, and a fragrant apple tart for dessert. Father, seated at the head of the table, carves the chicken himself, a task that would have been performed by the butler in London. "I was always tasked with carving when visiting my grandfather here," he remarks, skillfully separating meat from bone. "He insisted every man should know how to handle a carving knife properly." "Did you visit often?" you ask, emboldened by the increasingly conversational tone he's adopted since the fire. "Every summer until I was 12. Then boarding school and university took precedence." He passes plates filled with succulent meat and crisp roasted potatoes. "My brother continued the tradition longer than I did." "Uncle William?" Emily asks through a mouthful of bread, earning a gentle remonstrance from Mother about speaking with one's mouth full. No, Emily, my younger brother, Robert." Father's voice holds that same soft note you heard when he first mentioned his brother's name. He was particularly fond of Moorside Cottage. "The one who," you begin, then stop, uncertain whether to reference the tragedy in front of Emily. "Yes," Father says simply. "The very same." Mother looks between you with evident curiosity but doesn't interrupt this rare moment of connection. "In fact," Father continues, serving himself last as protocol demands, "I believe you're sleeping in what was once his room, Henry." The revelation creates an unexpected connection to this previously unknown uncle, this boy who fell through ice and whose death somehow shaped the man your father became. Dinner progresses with less formality than any meal in your memory. Father actually participates in the conversation rather than eating in majestic silence. He answers Emily's endless questions about farm animals and moorland wildlife with unexpected patience. He even relates a story from his youth, how he and Robert once got hopelessly lost on the moors and were found by a shepherd who brought them safely home. "Were you punished terribly?" Emily asks, wide-eyed at the tale of adventure. "Not as severely as we expected," Father admits. "My grandfather was a different sort of man than my father, more forgiving of boyhood transgressions." The subtle critique of his own father, your grandfather, whom you never met, offers yet another piece in the puzzle of understanding who Father is and how he came to be that way. After dinner, instead of withdrawing to a separate study as he would have in London, Father remains with the family in the sitting room. The single shared space means that Victorian conventions about men and women occupying different spheres after dinner cannot be observed. Mother produces Emily's needlework from a travelling case, and they sit together by the fire, stitching quietly. You find your own entertainment in exploring the bookshelves that line one wall, discovering volumes that must have belonged to several generations of Armitages. Father, seated in a worn leather armchair with a book open on his lap, watches your exploration with evident interest. You'll find some adventure stories on the bottom shelf, he offers, tales of King Arthur and his knights that once captured my imagination. The casual admission of having enjoyed such fanciful literature, rather than only the serious historical and theological works proper Victorian gentlemen were supposed to prefer, feels like another small gift. You locate the book he mentioned, its leather binding cracked with age and use, and settle into a chair nearby. The physical proximity, father in one armchair, you in another just a few feet away, would have been unusual in the expansive rooms of your London house. Here, it feels natural, comfortable. As darkness falls outside, oil lamps cast a warm glow over the sitting room. The fire crackles peacefully and rain begins to patter against the windows. Not the sooty downpour of London, but clean country rain washing the moorland. Emily, struggling to keep her eyes open after the excitement of the journey, finally admits defeat. "I'm rather tired, Mama." "Of course you are, dear. It's been a long day." Mother sets aside her needlework. "Let's get you ready for bed." In London, this would have been the nursemaid's task, with Mother perhaps stopping by later for a brief good night. Here, Mother herself leads Emily upstairs to prepare her for sleep. Left alone with Father, you feel a momentary return of the old awkwardness, but he surprises you by breaking the silence first. "Your mother will need help adjusting to country life," he says quietly. "It's quite different from London society." "She seems to be managing well so far," you offer. "Yes, she has always been remarkably adaptable." His expression softens when speaking of her, that same affection you glimpsed at the Crystal Palace visible again, one of her many admirable qualities. Another revelation that Father not only loves Mother, but actively admires her character. Victorian marriages were practical arrangements as often as love matches, and parents rarely discussed such matters with their children. "Will you be travelling much, sir? For the business?" you ask, remembering his earlier comment about salvaging what he could. He sighs, closing his book. "Some, yes, though less than I initially feared. Your uncle has been unexpectedly generous in his assistance." The admission clearly costs him something. Victorian men prided themselves on independence, on being providers rather than recipients of charity, even from family. "I'm glad he's helping," you say carefully. Father studies you, his expression thoughtful. "As am I, Henry. Pride is a necessary quality in a man, but it can become a burden when carried to excess. That is something I am attempting to learn." The humility in this statement, from a man who has always projected absolute certainty in all things, is perhaps the most surprising development yet. Mother returns downstairs, her face softened by the simple maternal act of tucking a child into bed. "Emily is asking for you, Charles," she says. "She wants to say good night." In London, Father's participation in bedtime rituals was limited to a formal blessing at evening prayers. Actually visiting a child's bedroom to say good night was the province of mothers and nursemaids. But Father rises without hesitation. "Of course." As he passes Mother, his hand brushes hers, a small, intimate gesture that speaks of shared strength and mutual support. Then he climbs the narrow stairs, his footsteps fading as he moves toward Emily's room. Mother sinks into the chair Father vacated, exhaustion evident in the slight slump of her shoulders. For a moment she allows the perfect posture required of Victorian ladies to relax, becoming simply a tired woman at the end of a trying day. "Are you well, Henry?" she asks softly. "Truly?" The direct question about your feelings, another departure from Victorian parenting norms, catches you off guard, but after everything that's happened, it seems fitting that Mother too is venturing beyond the prescribed boundaries of her role. I think so, you answer honestly. It's all very different, but, she prompts when you hesitate. But Father seems different here, more himself somehow. Mother's smile holds both sadness and hope. Yes, I believe he is. Yorkshire has awakened something in him that London buried long ago. She looks toward the stairs. Perhaps this misfortune will prove a blessing in disguise. Father's footsteps sound on the stairs as he returns from Emily's room. He pauses in the doorway, observing you and Mother with an expression that might almost be contentment. Emily is already asleep, he reports. The journey has quite exhausted her. As it has all of us, Mother agrees, stifling a yawn behind her hand. Perhaps we should retire early tonight. You expect to be dismissed to your room while the adults remain downstairs, but Father nods in agreement. A sensible suggestion. Henry, are you ready to see your new quarters? The invitation to retire at the same time, as if you're all equals in tiredness if not in status, is yet another small adjustment to the family dynamic. Upstairs, Father himself shows you to your room, the one that once belonged to his brother Robert. It's small but comfortable, with a narrow bed, a simple chest of drawers, and a window overlooking the moonlit moor. There are extra blankets in the chest, Father says, lighting a candle on the bedside table. The nights can be cool, even in late spring. Thank you, sir. He hesitates, one hand on the doorframe, looking as if he wants to say something more but can't quite find the words. Victorian fathers didn't typically wish their sons good night, didn't tuck them in or offer bedtime affection. Those moments of tenderness, if they existed at all, were reserved for infants and very young children, and even then were often delegated to mothers. But this father, your father, has been transformed by crisis and relocation. He clears his throat softly. Sleep well, Henry. 3 simple words, spoken with genuine warmth rather than as a formality. You clutch them to your heart like a physical gift. Good night, Father. He nods once, then withdraws, closing the door quietly behind him. You change into your nightshirt and climb into bed, pulling the unfamiliar blankets up to your chin. The mattress is firmer than your London bed, the pillow less plump but somehow more comforting in its simplicity. The wind whispers across the moor, a sound unlike any you've heard in London. Rain taps gently against the window. From somewhere downstairs comes the soft murmur of your parents' voices, not arguing or discussing business, but simply talking as companions do at the end of a long day. Sleep begins to cloud your mind, but before surrendering completely, you reach under your pillow and touch the silver pocket watch Father entrusted to you. The cool metal warms against your fingertips, a tangible connection to generations of Armitages who slept beneath this roof, including the uncle whose room you now occupy. The last thing you remember before drifting off is the soft creak of floorboards outside your door, Father checking one last time on the son sleeping in his lost brother's bed, not the distant Victorian patriarch who once ruled your London household, but a man rediscovering parts of himself long buried beneath propriety and position. A father who, in his own limited way, is learning to love openly in a world that never taught him how. 3 weeks pass in a gentle rhythm unlike anything you've known in London. Moorside Cottage settles around your family like a well-worn coat, the initial strangeness giving way to familiar comfort. Mrs. Thwaite comes each morning to help with cooking and cleaning, but leaves by mid-afternoon, meaning the family spends more time alone together than ever before. The absence of London's rigid social calendar has transformed Mother. Her corsets are looser, her hair often simply braided rather than elaborately arranged. She's taken to working in the cottage garden, something no respectable London lady would have done. Her hands, once pristinely white, now bear the honest calluses of one who digs in soil and cuts her own flowers. Emily has bloomed like those garden flowers, her natural exuberance no longer constrained by nursery walls and strict social codes. She collects wildflowers, befriends the chickens at Uncle William's home farm, and returns each day with her pinafore muddied and her cheeks flushed with fresh air. And Father is perhaps the most profoundly changed of all. He still journeys occasionally to the nearest large town to meet with solicitors and business contacts. He still maintains certain formalities, grace before meals, proper attire for dinner, even when dining only with family. But the unbending Victorian patriarch who ruled your London household has been replaced by a more complex figure, a man rediscovering aspects of himself long buried beneath societal expectations. This morning, you wake to birdsong instead of street noise, sunlight streaming through curtains far simpler than those that once adorned your London bedroom. The pocket watch beneath your pillow tells you it's just past 6, early but not unreasonably so for country living. Dressing quickly in clothes now more practical than fashionable, you make your way downstairs, expecting to find the kitchen empty. Instead, Father sits at the table, a cup of tea steaming before him, gazing out the window at the mist-shrouded moor. "Good morning, sir," you say, surprised to find him alone. He turns, and you're struck again by how his face has changed in these weeks. The stern lines around his mouth have softened. His eyes hold a calm that London's constant pressures never permitted. "Henry," he acknowledges with a nod, "you're up early." "Yes, sir. I thought I might walk to the ridge before breakfast." In London, such an independent expedition would have been unthinkable. Here, it's become routine. These solitary morning rambles across the heather-covered hills, watching the sun burn away the mist. Father considers you for a moment, then says something that stops your heart. "I might join you, if you've no objection." Join you? Father has never shown interest in accompanying you on these walks. They've been your private time, your opportunity to explore this new world at your own pace. Of course, sir. I'd welcome the company." He rises, setting his teacup in the basin, another small task he would never have performed in London, where servants handled every domestic detail. "I'll fetch my boots." 10 minutes later, you're striding across the moor together, dew dampening your trouser cuffs, the early sun casting long shadows across the undulating landscape. Father matches his pace to yours rather than expecting you to keep up with his longer stride. Another small but significant adjustment. "The ridge affords quite the view," you offer, breaking the companionable silence. "Indeed. I spent many hours there as a boy, often with..." He pauses, then says the name that has become increasingly present in his conversation, "with Robert." You've noticed this pattern, how he now speaks freely of his brother, as if the move to Yorkshire has unlocked memories long kept behind locked doors. Not just the tragedy of the ice, but happier recollections too. Adventures shared, lessons learned, bonds formed. The ridge, when you reach it, offers a panorama that still takes your breath away despite daily visits. The valley spreads below, patchworked with stone walls and dotted with grazing sheep. The distant village nestles in a fold of hills, its church spire catching the morning light. And beyond, the moors roll endlessly toward the horizon, purple with heather and gold with gorse. Father stands beside you, hands clasped behind his back, drinking in the vista with evident appreciation. It hasn't changed, he says softly. Not in all these years. Is that why you brought us here, sir? Because it reminded you of happier times? The question is bolder than you would have dared ask the London version of father, but here, with the vast sky above and no social constraints to bind you, such directness feels permitted. He considers the question seriously, his gaze still on the distant horizon. Not consciously, perhaps, but yes, I suppose there's truth in that. He glances at you. Does that disappoint you, that our relocation was driven by sentiment as much as practicality? No, sir, quite the opposite. He nods, satisfied with your answer. The business failure was real enough, but when considering where to retreat, Yorkshire called to me in ways I didn't fully understand until we arrived. He gestures toward the valley. There's a permanence here that London lacks. The stones, the hills, the very air. They endure while empires rise and fall. It's the most philosophical you've ever heard him, almost poetic in his appreciation of nature. This man who once seemed to care only for ledgers and social standing now speaks of enduring landscapes and the perspective they provide. William has offered me a position, father says abruptly, changing the subject. Managing the woolen mill in the village. It's a modest operation compared to Manchester, but sound, profitable. This is significant news, the first concrete information about how your family will survive financially. Will you accept? I'm considering it. He turns from the view to look directly at you. It would mean remaining here permanently, selling the London house, establishing ourselves as country gentry rather than London society. The implications are enormous. Not returning to your former life. No more prestigious school for you. No finishing school and London season for Emily when she comes of age. A complete revision of the future once mapped out for the Armitage family. How do you feel about that prospect? Father asks, and the question itself reveals how far he's come. The London father would never have consulted a child on family decisions. You consider your answer carefully. I would miss certain aspects of London, my school friends, the museums, the bookshops, but here, you gesture to the sweeping landscape. Here feels right somehow, as if we fit better in Yorkshire than we ever did in London. Father's expression softens with something like approval. My thoughts exactly. He turns back to the view, silent for a moment before adding, Your mother shares this assessment. She's found unexpected contentment in simpler living, and Emily would certainly vote to stay with the chickens and lambs, you add, earning a rare chuckle from father. Indeed she would. He checks his pocket watch, not the heirloom now in your possession, but a simpler timepiece. We should return. Your mother will have breakfast waiting. The walk back to the cottage is filled with comfortable silence. The sun climbs higher, burning away the last wisps of morning mist, warming the heather beneath your feet. A pair of grouse explode into flight as you pass, startling a laugh from you. Father doesn't reprimand the unseemly outburst as he once might have. Instead, his mouth twitches in shared amusement. Approaching the cottage, you spot Emily in the garden, apparently giving Mrs. Thwaites' cat an extensive lecture on proper behaviour. The domestic scene, so different from the formal tableau of your London life, feels right in a way you couldn't have imagined a month ago. Henry, Father says, slowing his pace as the cottage comes into view. There's something I've been meaning to discuss with you. His tone makes you attentive. Yes, sir? I've observed your interest in the natural sciences, your collections of rocks and pressed plants, your questions about the local wildlife. He pauses, seeming to choose his words with care. Should we remain in Yorkshire permanently, I've been considering your education. A pang of anxiety touches you. with the family's reduced circumstances, will there be any formal education at all, or will you be sent to work as many boys your age already do? The village school is adequate for basic instruction, Father continues, but limited in scientific education. However, the vicar, Mr. Thornton, is something of an amateur naturalist. He has expressed willingness to provide supplementary tutoring in exchange for assistance cataloguing local flora. The offer startles you. Father has always insisted on classical education. Latin, Greek, mathematics, history. The natural sciences were considered secondary, included in the curriculum but never emphasized. That he would now encourage this interest, even arrange special tutoring, suggests a fundamental shift in his educational philosophy. That would be, "I would enjoy that very much, sir," you manage, trying to contain your excitement. Father nods, satisfied. "I thought you might. Knowledge takes many forms, Henry. That is something I've come to appreciate rather late in life." This admission that he has changed his mind, learned something new, evolved in his thinking, would have been unthinkable from the London father, who presented himself as all-knowing and unchangeable. "There is one other matter," he says, stopping completely now, the cottage just 100 yards distant. "Something I've been remiss in addressing." His serious tone makes you wary. "Sir, the night of the fire," his eyes meet yours directly. "You saved your sister's life by going to her aid. I commended your bravery then, but in the chaos that followed and the journey here, I neglected to—" He clears his throat. "That is, I wish to ensure you understand the depth of my appreciation." He's struggling for words, this man who once issued commands and pronouncements with such ease. The emotional territory is unfamiliar to him, the language of feeling unpracticed on his tongue. "Thank you, sir," you say, trying to ease his discomfort. "But I only did what anyone would do." "Not anyone," he corrects, his voice low. "I told you about Robert, about my own failure to act when he needed me most. You did better, Henry, better than I did at your age." The comparison, so direct, so personal, leaves you speechless. "I find myself wondering," Father continues, his gaze now on the distant hills, "what sort of man Robert might have become had he lived, whether he would have possessed your courage, your thoughtfulness." He turns back to you, his expression more open than you've ever seen it. "I think perhaps he would have, and I think he would have been very proud to know his room is occupied by a nephew worthy of it." The words feel like a benediction, a healing of some ancient wound that Father has carried silently all these years. You don't know how to respond, so you simply nod, your throat tight with emotion a proper Victorian boy should never display. Father's hand rises, hovers uncertainly, then settles briefly on your shoulder, a touch so rare, so precious that it seems to burn through the fabric of your jacket. Not a full embrace, that would be too radical a departure from Victorian fatherhood, but a physical connection nonetheless, freely given rather than required by circumstance. "We should join the others," he says, removing his hand and resuming his walk toward the cottage. But something has shifted between you, some barrier dissolved by his words and that brief touch. Inside, the cottage is warm with morning sunlight and the smell of baking bread. Mother looks up from the stove, her face brightening at the sight of you both. "There you are. I was beginning to think you'd wandered all the way to Scotland." "Nearly did," Father replies with unexpected lightness. "The view was rather captivating. As captivating as these scones?" Mother teases, lifting a tray from the oven. The easy banter between them, another development of country living, still surprises you. "Nothing could compete with Mrs. Armitage's scones," Mrs. Thwaite declares, entering from the pantry with a crock of fresh butter. "Not even Yorkshire's finest views." Breakfast unfolds with simple pleasure. Hot scones, butter from Uncle William's dairy, honey from the village beekeeper, strong tea in mismatched cups. Emily chatters about her plans to visit the lambs, mother discusses garden arrangements with Mrs. Thwaite, and father simply listens, his expression one of quiet contentment. When the meal ends, he doesn't immediately retreat to solitary pursuits as he might have in London. Instead, he announces, "I thought we might visit the stream this afternoon. The weather seems favourable for fishing." Emily claps her hands in delight. "Can I try to catch a fish too?" In London, such an unladylike request would have been firmly denied. Here, father merely says, "I don't see why not. Henry can show you how to bait a hook." The day unfolds with unhurried grace. Mrs. Thwaite departs after tidying the kitchen. Mother writes letters at the small desk by the window, and you help Emily make a fishing rod from a willow branch and a piece of string. Father disappears briefly to his bedroom, returning with an actual fishing rod, preserved apparently from his boyhood days. The afternoon expedition to the stream is a revelation. Father, freed from London propriety and the weight of business failures, becomes almost boyish in his enthusiasm for fishing. He wades into the shallow stream, trousers rolled to his knees, an unthinkable breach of dignity in his former life, just to demonstrate the proper technique for casting a line. Emily's attempts at fishing quickly devolve into splashing and rock collecting, but father doesn't reprimand her childish exuberance. You manage to catch a small trout, earning genuine praise from father that warms you more than the afternoon sun. As twilight approaches, you walk home together, mother and Emily ahead, gathering wildflowers for the dinner table. You and father following, carrying the modest catch of 2 trout and a small perch. "We shall make fine country folk yet," father observes, watching mother show Emily how to weave a daisy chain, "though I confess I never imagined such a transformation." "Are you truly content here, sir?" you ask, the peaceful day making you bold after London's excitement? He considers the question with the seriousness it deserves. "Content? Yes, I believe I am. London offered position and prosperity, but at considerable cost." He glances at you. "Not all wealth can be measured in pounds and shillings, Henry. That is perhaps the most valuable lesson of our reduced circumstances." The wisdom in this, the ability to find blessing in misfortune, strikes you as the greatest change in him. The London father would have viewed financial failure as an unmitigated disaster, a stain on family honour. This Yorkshire father has somehow found freedom in the very constraints that once would have destroyed him. Evening brings the familiar routine now established at Moorside Cottage. A simple dinner cooked partly by mother, another departure from London ways, father reading aloud afterward from one of the books discovered on the cottage shelves, Emily nodding off by the fire until mother carries her up to bed. The evening reading is new, father sharing Wordsworth's poetry or Scott's adventures, his deep voice bringing the words to life in the lamp-lit sitting room. Tonight it's a passage from The Lady of the Lake, the heroic verse somehow more affecting in this remote setting than it ever could have been in London's drawing rooms. When Emily's eyes finally close completely, mother gathers her up with practiced ease. "Time for bed, I think. Good night, Charles. Good night, Henry." "Good night, Margaret," father replies, his voice soft with evident affection. "I'll be up shortly." Another change. In London, mother and father kept separate bedrooms, as was customary for their class. Here, the cottage's limited space has placed them in a shared chamber, seemingly without complaint from either party. Left alone with father, you expect him to dismiss you to your own bed. Instead, he closes the book and says, "I received a letter from London today, from Mr. Jameson." The name of the business manager who cooked the books sends a chill through the warm evening. What did he want? To confess primarily, and to offer restitution, a portion of the funds he misappropriated. Father sighs. Too little, too late to save the business, but enough perhaps to secure a modest independence should the mill position prove unsuitable. Will you accept it? The money? Yes, I believe I shall. Pride must sometimes bow to practicality, especially when one has a family to consider. He studies you with that new, more perceptive gaze, but that's not why I mention it. Sir, the letter contained news of our former neighbours. Apparently, our hasty departure sparked considerable speculation. The prevailing theory is that we've suffered financial embarrassment and fled to avoid creditors. The blunt assessment makes you wince. In Victorian society, such rumours could destroy a family's standing for generations. Does that trouble you? Father asks. The loss of social position in London? The direct question deserves an honest answer. Sometimes, you admit. I think about my school friends wondering what they've been told about our disappearance, whether they think badly of us now. Father nods, accepting this truth without judgment. A natural concern. The good opinion of others matters, particularly at your age. He leans forward slightly. But consider this, Henry. Those whose regard is truly worth having would not withdraw it over financial misfortune. And those who would, well, perhaps their good opinion was never as valuable as we believed. The wisdom in this perspective, its freedom from the crushing weight of social expectation, feels revolutionary coming from a Victorian gentleman who once lived by society's rigid code. In any case, Father continues, I find myself increasingly indifferent to London gossip. My concerns now centre on matters closer at hand. This cottage, this village, this family. His gaze meets yours directly. Your future, Henry, Emily's, your mother's happiness. These things hold substance. The rest is merely smoke. The reference to the nursery fire is intentional, you think, a reminder of what truly matters when crisis strips away pretense. Or now, he says, rising from his chair, it grows late, we should both seek our beds. You stand, prepared to bid him good night, but he surprises you by moving to the bookshelf and selecting a slim volume bound in faded green leather. I thought you might enjoy this, he says, extending the book toward you. It belonged to my grandfather, a journal of his observations of local wildlife, quite detailed drawings of birds and plants, perhaps useful for your own studies. The gift, unexpected and perfectly aligned with your interests, leaves you momentarily speechless. Thank you, Father. I'll treasure it. See that you use it, he corrects gently. Books, like minds, benefit from regular exercise. Upstairs, your bedroom welcomes you with familiar simplicity. The narrow bed, the small desk beneath the window, the shelf now holding your growing collection of rocks and pressed flowers. You place the journal carefully on the desk, promising yourself an early morning exploration with it as your guide. As you prepare for sleep, you hear Father's footsteps in the hall, his quiet voice exchanging words with Mother in their room, the sound of their muted conversation, the occasional soft laugh. These domestic intimacies were never part of your London existence, where parents maintained careful distance from children and each other. Sliding beneath the blankets, you reach automatically for the pocket watch beneath your pillow. The silver case gleams in the moonlight streaming through your window, the inscription inside a constant reminder of family bonds that transcend time. To my beloved son, may you always find your way home. Home. No longer the grand London house with its rigid hierarchies and formal spaces, but this stone cottage where a father can roll up his trousers to wade in a stream, where a mother can bake bread with flour-dusted hands, where a family can discover versions of themselves long buried beneath societal expectations. The moonlight creates patterns on your bedroom ceiling, dancing shadows of tree branches stirring in the gentle night breeze. From the moor comes the distant, haunting call of an owl. The pocket watch ticks steadily in your hand, its rhythm matching your slowing heartbeat as sleep approaches. Father has changed here in Yorkshire, or perhaps more accurately, returned to who he might have been had life taken different turns. Not entirely transformed, he remains a Victorian father with all the reserve and authority that entails, but the walls between you have thinned, allowing glimpses of the man behind the role, the heart behind the formality. You think of his hand on your shoulder this morning, his voice speaking of Robert, his evident pride in your actions, not effusive demonstrations by modern standards perhaps, but revolutionary within the constraints of his era and upbringing. Small permissions, quiet acknowledgements, brief moments of connection. This is how a Victorian father loves, not with embraces or verbal declarations, but with shared fishing expeditions and gifted books, with rolled-up trousers and evening readings, with the gradual relaxing of barriers erected by a society that valued propriety over emotional expression. As sleep claims you at last, the watch still warm in your hand, you carry with you the certainty that beneath the starched collars and formal address of Victorian fatherhood beat hearts as capable of love as any, hearts that, given permission, could express that love in their own quiet, dignified way. And perhaps that's enough. Perhaps that's everything. The watch ticks, the owl calls, the Yorkshire night wraps around Moorside Cottage like a protective embrace, cradling its sleeping inhabitants, a family finding its way home to each other at last. And as you drift deeper into dreams, the boundaries between past and present blur, allowing you to carry this gentle truth back to your own time, your own bed, that love exists in many forms across many eras, sometimes hidden beneath stern exteriors and formal customs, but no less real for its quieter expression. Sleep now, knowing this. Rest in the warmth of understanding that spans centuries, connecting Victorian hearts to your own as you sink into peaceful slumber.